Welcome to Short Scale Modelling. This is part 3 of Airifx Supermarine Spitfire Mark 14 in civilian schemes. Scale is 1 to 48. In part 2 I made up the cockpit, so in part 3 I'm going to be carrying on with the build, placing the fuselage together and putting on the wings. So let's jump into this and see how well I get on. The first thing I've got to do is mark up the fuselage with A and B. Because I'm building two at the same time and each variant is slightly different, it's important at this stage that I don't get the fuselage mixed up. I'm using Umbro 78 cockpit green here just to paint the side panel, and while that's drying I'm just marking up the other fuselage with B. So that's variants A and B, and just to show you the slight differences, one here, the variant A has a little bit cut off the tip of the tail, and there's a little bit here to be cut off as well. I don't know why that's got to be cut off. I'm going to be checking up with the canopy to see if that's necessary. But it's back to the painting, and I'm using Umbro's 56 aluminium. Now, there's a very good chance you're not going to see this colour at all, but if you do get a slight glimpse of it, it's better than just seeing bare plastic. To cut off the tail tip is quite easy. There is a line on it for your knife to follow through. So I'm just using my hobby knife and dragging it over the pre-marked line to cut it off. I will take a couple of passes depending on how sharp your knife is. You can now place the cockpit unit inside the fuselage. There's two little strips of plastic as location points for this to fit in, and it fit in really well. Sometimes these things can be a little bit tricky to fit in, but if you just line up the bulkheads with the markings, you shouldn't have any problem with it. I'm using Revel Aquacolor 04 Gloss White here, and this is to paint one of the spinners. I think this is for variant A that I'm painting here. The reason why I'm starting these now is the white will take a few coats before I've got a good coverage on it. So it's always best just to start it as soon as you can. I'm also using the same colour to paint the inner parts of the landing gear bay section. Now, I don't know whether the wheels will completely cover this or not, but again, it's wise just to paint it if you want to see just little parts of it. The other variant is Umbro 11 Silver, so it's the same area I'm painting but just with the other colour. However, the other spinner is Umbro 14 French Blue. Now, the instructions are calling for a different shade of blue, which is a mix of colours, but I don't want to mix colours just for this and a little bit on the canopy, so I've opted for the French blue. It's time to put the fuselage together. This can be a little bit tricky. I found it better to work from the tail end and going forward. So once I got it in position, I just clamped up the tail end, then started placing my clamps as I got the fuselage lined up. Some parts I had to squeeze in quite firmly to get them to meet, but they do meet. It just needs a little firmer hand to do so. Next to go on is this central piece here that just pops in. That lined up perfectly. Onto the lower part of the wings, and I'm just marking out where I'm going to be putting the connection part for the stand. This part of the build, of course, is all going to depend whether A, you're going to put it on a stand in flight mode, and B, what sort of stand you're going to be using. I'm using the standard Airifx stand that they used to produce. I'm not sure you can get them anymore. But it requires two holes, so I'm just going to use my pin drive to initially open them up. I'll then use my knife just to create a larger hole by twisting it around and checking for fit as I go along. I'm placing on my second coat of white. This will probably take about 3 to 4 coats in total, I think. If I hold them up to the camera, you can see them coming along quite nicely. Now to add your building on the wing, so I'm placing in the base for the landing gear. And once they're in, there's 2 strips of plastic that go in between them to act as the other parts, well, sidewalls of the bay. Each one is slightly different, but they have their unique location points, so you can't get them mixed up. They will only fit in one way. With the B variant, I'm cutting out the area where the guns go. Unlike the tail on the A variant, there's a couple of lines that you can run your knife over to cut these out. The plastic's a little bit thicker at the edges here, so it may take a little while to get these cut out. It can be a little bit tough. But if you take it steady, it will pop out. Just be careful that your knife doesn't slip too much, or not at all, of course. And then it's Humbrol 11 silver for both variants getting painted in here. Again, I'm not sure whether you'll actually see this part. I think this will be more visible if the landing gear is down. I'm using micro crystal clear here for the little clear part that goes in here. Sometimes I will leave this little part off and I'll just use the crystal clear as a window later on down the build. But I thought I'd place the part in. All it means is when I go to paint and reprime, it will mean I'll have to scrape it off each time to keep the window visible, or I can mask it, of course. I can now attach the bottom half to the fuselage. I only need a couple of little bits of cement around the edges here. It's better putting it on the cement on the fuselage other than the wings. That way you're not going to have too much excess cement on your kit. This is a really nice fit. What I did was, what I recommend is, once you get your anchor point in, so I done the tail end, I clamped it straight away each side before I lined up the front piece. There was minor adjustments needed just to line it up, but you'll need a smaller clamp for this because there's only a very little bit of top plastic to grip onto at this stage. It's onto the top section of the wings, and I'm working on the B variant here. And like the lower section, I'm removing the mounts for the guns. This variant also has the clipped wings, so I'm just taking the wing tips off. Again, like the other cuts, there is a little line to follow with your blade. Just be careful of this. You don't want to go off track when you're cutting them. By all means, use a saw or a Dremel if you have one. I do have one, but most of the time I'll just use my knife. But if you are using a knife, just be careful. The edge is a little bit rough now that I've removed the part, but I'm not so worried about that. I can clean that up later on, and there's a little piece that goes over the top of that anyway. So now it's time to fit these wings, and I'm fitting them from the root end first, and then, like the bottom parts, I'm going to be clamping them as soon as I get the root end lined up, then using my clamps going out towards the tip. And it's the same for the A variant, but this wing has a tip on it, and the bottom part of the wing just butts up to that round section that I removed off from the B variant. The rear wings were simple enough. They were just two halves cemented together. Once they were dry, it was just a simple case of pushing them into the locations. They fitted really well. The only thing to note really on these is you may have to hold them down slightly because mine's had the tendency to sweep up, and they have to have a 90-degree angle on them, so you don't want them sweeping up. So just pushing them down for a minute until the cement took hold was all it took. So it's onto the flaps of the wings of the rear wings. After a little bit of clean up, these just get pushed onto the wing itself, and when they go on, you can see why the main wing has to be a 90-degree angle for these to fit. Once it was on, there's a little cap piece that goes in between. This was quite fiddly to fit. It enables for the tail fin to run in alignment with the wings and tail, the rudder part of the tail fin. But it was a very awkward piece to fit in. So it took a little while to get there, but once I did get it in there, everything lined up perfectly. And once it was on, I was able to fit the rudder. And I'm doing variant A here, so I've got variant B to do. And this will bring part 3 to an end. So if you haven't done so already, why don't you check out the channel for my other builds? If you subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell. That way you'll be kept up to date not only with this build, but all my future builds as well, of course. Hit that like button. Don't be afraid to leave a comment. And of course you can share the video. But for now, thank you all very much for watching. Bye bye.